Chapter 11 of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo is officially here, so let's give you guys a summary. And if you do not want spoilers,
back out right now.
The first page starts off with Usami and Mino talking, and they're talking about the Sumerian spaceship. Usami asks Mino, so Pandora's box has been officially opened, and Mino says yes. And then Usami says their spaceship is powered on cursed energy. Mino says the research on cursed energy and being able to use it as a form of energy, it's still ongoing. Adding on that converting it to anything other than a cursed technique, the research has stalled. Usami says he doesn't want the public to know about this, and also he wants to try and get cool with the Sumerians so they could figure out a way to maybe get that technology for themselves. Mino asks him, what should we do, Usami? And Usami says, keep it a secret. Mino's shocked by this, but Usami gives him his reasoning, mainly because he knows that if they share this information, other countries might start abducting more Japanese people, trying to find somebody who has cursed energy that they could utilize. Adding in that he wants to get a non-disclosure agreement with the Sumerians, and he says that's why this cultural exchange dinner party has to go great. Just then, Mino gets a call from Yuka, and Yuka starts explaining that they decided on Takopa for their dinner party. She asks Mino and Usami if they know any way that they could get a whole bunch of octopus, and Usami goes, yeah, I've got a guy for that. I've got a connection for this. Then the next page, it pans to this Master Roshi looking dude. He asks Tsurugi and Maru, how many legs do an octopus have? To which Tsurugi says 8, and the guy goes, good job. But these octopus here, they are special. They start with 8, and then it merges into 1, and the other ones shrivel off. Pause. So then all the flavor from those other 8 tentacles are all in this one. He says it's rare because most people usually don't try to get these because it's dangerous to get to them, but he says, with some people rolling with Usami, for sorcerers like you, this should be light work. We then have Maru and Cross, and he has them in the water getting ready to dive and go catch these octopus. Tsurugi tells him, hey, wait a second, I'll go down first and then you can have a try after. Tsurugi tells Maru, don't tell me you're one of those people that sink like a rock. And of course, Maru doesn't understand this lingo that he's using, and Tsurugi just tells him, don't tell me you're one of those people who can't swim and you just sink to the bottom. And Maru says, nah, I'll be straight, I've been caught in a flood before and I was fine. With that, Tsurugi dives down, and with that, when he dives down, he starts looking, and he sees a whole bunch of jellyfish down there. And he says, yeah, a special reef swarming with jellyfish, that'd be way out of an amateur's league. Then adding in, let me hurry this up because I want to come up with one and scare Yuka with it. The next page, it starts with Yuka, and she has a handful of her pills for her illness. And Cross is with her. He looks a little concerned and he goes, shouldn't you tell Tsurugi Okotsu about your illness? And Yuka says, nah, I just want things to be how they always are. There's not really much Cross can do to change her mind, so he just looks down a little bit, kind of sad, and he goes, I see. Then the bottom panel of this page, it goes back over to Maru, and he's looking at Tsurugi and he goes, you are still Tsurugi, aren't you? Tsurugi gets mad and he goes, of course I am. And Maru goes, well, it's kind of hard to tell because you look like you got beat up, bro. Because Tsurugi's face is all swollen from getting stung by these jellyfish. Maru says, anyways, my turn. Tsurugi tries to tell him to go get some of the guard gear from it, and he's like, I'm good, I don't need any of that. Then he even adds in, I'm gonna catch a bigger octopus than you. Next panel, Maru's back up and he does have an octopus, and he is looking just like Tsurugi. He got the absolute living hell stung out of him by these jellyfish. Then we have a little bit of a fun moment between these two. Tsurugi goes, the octopus I caught is bigger, and Maru's freaking out hold on, we gotta lay him out flat so we can see whose is bigger. Pause. Then Maru adds on, as a warrior, I can't lose. Tsurugi gets curious and asks, what are warriors in Romillion culture? And Maru says, they're basically just sorcerers, but only men can be sorcerers. Tsurugi asks, you mean women aren't allowed? Maru responds, no, it doesn't mean that women can't necessarily wield Rolaluka or cursed energy. Now this is an official translation, but he says, they can only be what you guys call windows. And that's why I was so surprised when I saw Yuka. I have heard rumors that there are female Disconte warriors, but I've never actually seen one, and I don't know much about them. Our Jujutsu is said to be a power bestowed upon our Romillion ancestors by the Kallian who were sent by the gods. We're taught that men are granted this power because they can't bear children and that they should use it to protect women and children. Tsurugi, who's listening attentively, says it sounds like how they thought in the Reiwa era. Maru goes, Reiwa, and Tsurugi goes, it was a long time ago. Tsurugi asks Maru, but isn't it tough for men who aren't Jujutsu sorcerers and women who can't bear children to live in a society with those values? And Maru breaks it down saying, oh sorry, I didn't mean to make you misunderstand. Anyone who works to protect Rumel is respected even if they're not warriors and even if they're not men, of course. Maru tells him, just like Jabaloma. And Maru says, our women will actually be present at this dinner party. Up until now, they've been being kept on the ship just to keep them safe. Adding on that he feels bad about that. He says it's not just being overprotective, it's downright patriarchal. Then Tsurugi has a thought of him and Yuka as kids, and it looks like Tsurugi has a little bit of blood on his shirt and his eye is bleeding a little bit. And Yuka's looking down, appearing to be sad. Tsurugi says, it's not that we're assuming they're weak. We just couldn't bear it if they were to actually get hurt. Adding on, and at that point, who's really the weak one? Haru just laughs and he's like, I guess you're right. Then on the next page, we get a look at the Sumerian girls, and they're like eating in what looks like a mess hall, cafeteria type deal. Then under that, we meet Kyoko Tomo, and she's the Jujutsu High nutritionist. And she's tripping while she's talking to Tsurugi and Yuka. She says, what do you mean the takoyaki course is party style? Then she says, what is wrong with these octopus? Why do they have one tentacle? And Maru adds in something that he learned from the old Master Roshi looking dude. He goes, it's actually wancha octopus. Then it pans to the Japanese officials and the Sumerian officials eating, and he goes, yes, the Diskunte tribe put a death curse on her. It activates when the chieftain dies or when Dabura defies the chieftain's orders. Jabaloma says, right now it seems we just stepped out of what you all refer to as curse techniques range, but just to be safe, we're looking for ways to break the curse. Usami begins to explain in Africa there is a tool called the black rope, and this rope can cancel out the effects of curse techniques. And he looks to Dabura and he says, if there is a chance we can get our hands on this, then we might be able to break your sister's curse. And Dabura in a calm tone just says, please do it. And Usami responds, we'll do everything that we can. Dabura tells Jabaloma, excuse me for a minute, and he stands up and exits the table. Yuka and Kyoko come bursting out of the kitchen. They're like, hey, everything's ready. And when they burst out of the kitchen, right in front of them stands Dabura. And Yuka says, oh, Dabura. Jabaloma and Usami, they both just look shocked. Dabura and Kyoko share this look at each other. Then on the next panels, we show like their POV of it. And it shows their faces. Then behind them, it just looks like a whole bunch of flowers. Kyoko starts tripping. She drags Yuka back into the kitchen. She says, oh no, Yuka, do I look okay? I barely have any makeup on. Yuka goes, yeah, I can tell. And then Kyoko responds, see, I am doomed. Then we get this like comically funny panel that just shows how Dabura was walking around when Kyoko was right there. And he's like, fee, fi, fo, fum type steps. And it pans to Usami and he goes, Mino, it just might be possible after all. And Mino goes, what could be possible? We don't get an answer right there, but then it pans down to food being cooked. Usami tells Jabaloma and Dabura, be careful, it's hot. And they start eating the food and he's like, hey, I told you guys it was hot. And they're over there doing like, you know when you threw like a pizza roll in your mouth and you're like, they're doing that. Tsurugi and Cross are then talking and Tsurugi's like, hey, it's going better than expected, right? And Cross goes, yes, it is. Tsurugi says, so next time it's going to be Vermilion course, right? And Cross kind of smiles and is like, yeah. Then it pans back to the spaceship and somebody says, Osuki. Somebody yells at him, come quick, Osuki, it's Elder Boro. He shows up and he goes, what's going on, Elder Boro? Osuki shows up and sees Elder Boro on the ground and he starts thinking to himself, there's tears coming from his third eye. He exclaims, what happened? Elder Boro says, they're dangerous. I saw Earthlings, the Japanese. I saw them killing a Callion. Then the final panel we get is this right here, and it's like looking through a fence with like a dark backdrop of a city and what looks like demons, maybe curses flying around. Is this the cursed realm? Is there finally a crossover between the real world and the cursed realm? Does Mahito have something to do with this? Like, what are the implications that this panel has? Because this just looks so dark and ominous. But overall, this was such a great chapter. Let me know what you guys thought about it down in the comments. Peace.